Good afternoon, class 7 students. I hope all of you are fine and staying healthy, and I hope all your notes till now are complete. So, we will today continue on with the remaining two types of heterotrophic nutrition. So, let us start it off with an activity. Okay, all of you can do this activity, it's from your NCRT book, where you take a piece of bread and you moisten it with some water. Okay, now you cover it and leave it in a warm place for 2 to 3 days. Okay, and if you have ever experienced stale or bread that has gone bad, then you might have seen it happening also. So you can do it at home also, see what happens in 2 3 days. What happens is fluffy patches appear on them, some very greenish colored patches appear on them, mold, very dark, right? So what is this color of these patches? So when we observe it properly and we observe it under a magnifying glass, you will see certain umbrella like structures. You might have seen these structures even in moist soil or rotting wood during the rainy season also. You can see their photos in your NCRT book too. So, the mushrooms that you eat at home, they are also certain types of this fungus only that we are going to now study. Okay, even in this you can see an image. Paheli is keen to know that if her beautiful shoes were spoiled by fungi during the rainy season because they got wet. They say that leather shoes should not be exposed to water, they should not get wet. This is why, because fungus grows on them and they get spoiled. All right, so let's see what it is. So these organisms that you observed on the leather and on the bread, this are called these are called fungi. Okay, and fungi, they have a different mode of nutrition. So they absorb the nutrients from the dead and decaying organic matter. Okay, dead and decaying organic matter, they absorb nutrients from them, and such organisms are called saprotrophs. You can write down the term in your copy: saprotrophs, saprotrophs. Okay, so these organisms are called saprotrophs or saprophytes. So these fungus spores, they are present in air and they grow as dark patches on food and other items like pickles. You might have seen pickles going bad, right? And leathers during a hot or a rainy season. Okay, so this is why in hot and humid weather, because they need some moisture to act on, so that is why hot and humid weather they get bad. That is why we store our food in fridge so that they don't get spoiled. Okay, here you can see some pictures of certain saprophytes. The first one is mushrooms, all of you know. Then the last one, these are called bread molds which occur on bread. It's a magnified view of that. Then the red one is another type of a mushroom that is found. So all of these are certain fungi that can be seen. Okay, now, okay, now for the last mode of heterotrophic nutrition, and that is a symbiotic relationship, and the mode is called symbiosis. Okay, so first of all we need to understand what this term symbiosis means. It means a mutually beneficial relationship between different groups or people or any two organisms. When two people, two organisms, two groups of people interact and they take advantage of each other, that is a mutually beneficial relationship. So it's helpful for both. One person helps the another and the other person helps them back. It's the same way you help your friend and your friend also helps you back, then you have a symbiotic relationship. So, in terms of plants, what we need to study is that there are certain organisms that live together, they provide food and shelter to each other, and this kind of nutrition is called symbiotic relationship. They are both dependent on each other. So, now we studied about fungi that live in the roots of trees. Now, they absorb nutrients from the trees, okay, and in turn, they help the plants to absorb water and nutrients from the soil required for proper growth. So the trees with their help absorb water and nutrients from soil, and these fungi, they absorb nutrients from the trees. Another example is lichens. The picture of lichens is there in the next slide. It's also where a symbiotic relationship exists. Now here the algae and the fungus, these two coexist. Now since the algae contain a green pigment, that is your chlorophyll, this helps the algae to produce food by photosynthesis, and they provide that food to the fungus. And in return, the fungus protects the algae from drying in sunlight by enclosing it inside. So it protects them from harsh dryness and keeps it warm and moist. Okay, so that way both of them coexist with each other. The last example of symbiosis that we can see is between a bee and a flower. The bee helps the plant in pollination. Okay, pollination is where how plants reproduce. Their flowers, their pollen grains stick to the legs of the bees, and the bee travels from one flower to the another where the grains are transferred. Okay, so that is pollination. You will study it later in higher classes in detail also, don't worry. Now, the flower helps provide pollen grains and nectar to the bee. Bees require nectar and pollen grains as nutrition. You've seen bees sitting on flowers. So this is also an example of symbiosis. Now you can see the photo of lichen, and I've shown you a simple diagram where you can see how the algae and the fungus coexist together. Okay, so you can see this to understand. Now, we have all seen farmers spreading manure or fertilizers in the fields, right? Or gardeners using them in lawns or their pots. So, we learned earlier that this is because we need to provide nitrogen as a nutrient to the soil. So, nitrogen rich fertilizers and manures are added to the soil just to increase its fertility. Here, what happens is there is a bacteria in the soil called Rhizobium. It takes atmospheric nitrogen and converts it into a soluble form. So this bacteria converts it into a soluble form, but Rhizobium cannot make its own food. Okay, so what it does is it lives in the roots of grams and peas, moong, beans, and other legumes. Legumes are the pulses, and provides them with nitrogen also. So both of them are in another symbiotic relationship. This is also an example of symbiotic relationship. Now you will write this in the copy, all these notes. You can pause the video at each of the places and you can keep on writing also. Okay. So what all did you learn in this chapter? We learned about the process, initially about what are nutrients, how plants synthesize their food, how some non-green plants also synthesize their food, that is heterotrophs, in which we studied about four types of heterotrophic nutrition, that is parasitic, insectivores, symbiotic relationship, and saproprotic relationship. Four relationships that you studied. Okay, so now you will take out your copies and write down the questions from the exercise I have provided at the end. The first question is, why do organisms take their food? All organisms need to take food to get energy for growth and development and maintenance of their bodies. Then the second question is, distinguish between a parasite and a saprotroph. Difference between parasite and saprotroph. Parasites are organisms that derive nutrition from the body of either the living organisms. So those are called parasites. Then an example. And saprotrophs, they derive nutrition from dead and decaying organisms. So they are called saprotrophs. So parasites from living and saprotrophs from dead and decaying organisms. Pause the video if you're still writing. Question 3. How would you test the presence of starch in leaves? So you take a potted plant with variegated leaves. You will write that entire activity again and draw the diagram given here. You keep the plant in a dark room for 3 days so that all starch gets used up. Now select a leaf, cover its portion with a black strip paper and keep the plant in sunlight for about 6 hours. Pluck the leaf from the plant, mark the uncovered area in it and trace them on a sheet of paper. Dip the leaf in boiling water for a few minutes. After it, immerse it in a beaker containing alcohol. Carefully place the above beaker in a water bath and heat till the alcohol begins to boil. Now dip the leaf in a dilute solution of iodine for a few minutes. Take out the leaf, rinse off the iodine solution. You observe that the presence of starch in various areas of the leaf which was uncovered, and you draw the diagram. Pause the video here if you're writing the answer. Question 4. Give a brief description of the process of synthesis of food in green plants. So you have to write the process of photosynthesis here. Leaves are food factories of the plants. The synthesis of food in plants occurs in leaves. Therefore, all the raw materials, water, carbon dioxide, sunlight must reach here. Water and minerals are transported to the leaves by the vessels which run like pipes throughout the root, the stem, the branches, and the leaves. The leaves have a green pigment called chlorophyll, which helps leaves to capture the energy of the sunlight. This energy is used to synthesize, that is, prepare food from carbon dioxide and water. Question 5. Show with the help of a sketch that the plants are the ultimate source of food. All the living beings depend on plants, whether directly or indirectly. For example, the plant eats animals, depends directly on plants, but carnivores depend indirectly on plants. The following sketch shows some examples of plant dependency. So that is the food chain that you have studied. So you have to draw those. Question 6. Fill in the blank questions. Green plants are called dash. The answer is autotrophs since they synthesize their own food. The food synthesized by the plants is stored as dash. The answer is starch. In photosynthesis, solar energy is captured by the pigment called chlorophyll. During photosynthesis, plants take in dash, that is carbon dioxide, and they release oxygen. Question 7. Name the following. A parasitic plant with yellow, slender, and tubular stem, that is cuscuta. Second, a plant that has both autotrophic and heterotrophic mode of nutrition. So that is your pitcher plant and Venus flytrap, your insectivores. Third, the pores through which leaves exchange gases, that is stomata. Question 8. Tick the correct answer. A marble is an example of, it is an example of a parasite. A marble is also an example of parasite. The second one, the plant which traps and feeds on insects is called pitcher plant. The answer is pitcher plant. Question 9. Match the items given in column 1 with those in column 2. The first one is chlorophyll. So the chlorophyll will match with leaf. Next one is nitrogen. Nitrogen will match with, yes, bacteria. A marble will match with a parasite. Animals will match with heterotrophs. And insects will match with pitcher plant. Okay. So the first, question 10, true and false statements. First one, carbon dioxide is released during photosynthesis. Yes, you said it right, it's false. Second one, plants which synthesize their food themselves are called saprotrophs. No, the sentence is wrong. Again, false. They are called autotrophs. The product of photosynthesis is not a protein. This is true. The product of photosynthesis is what? Carbon dioxide, water, and starch. Starch is produced in forms of carbohydrates, not proteins. Solar energy is converted into chemical energy during photosynthesis. Yes, that is correct. That is true. Question 11. Choose the correct option. Which part of the plant takes in carbon dioxide from the air for photosynthesis? The answer is stomata. Question 12. Choose the correct option. Plants take carbon dioxide from the atmosphere mainly through their leaves. Yes, the answer is leaves. So that is the end of your chapter. I hope all of you have understood it. Take down all the notes, complete your notes in the copy before we start the next class. In the next class, we'll be starting with a new chapter. So before that, you finish off your notes completely in the free time that you've got now. Everyone stay safe and healthy. We'll meet you in the next class.